You guys, have you ever wished you could fly? To lift up off the ground, leave gravity behind, and soar as high as you can? You're not the only one. For decades now, we've seen countless characters fly in their own unique ways. From Superman's majestic righteousness, to Iron Man's rock and roll attitude, and Neo's fluid simplicity. Heroes, the Boys, Chronicle, Hancock, and so much more we'll get into today. In this video, let's take a closer look at the visual and practical effects of how each character was shown to take flight. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. It all began with Superman. You might think the first time he showed up on screen was the 1978 movie, but you would be wrong! It was actually back in 1948, where he was played by Kirk Alyn in a black and white TV show. Much like how modern movies will switch from a live-action actor to a CG double, back then they had the clever idea to swap Kirk out with the cartoon version of himself whenever he flew. Sure, it was jarring and not too believable, but what do you expect? It was 1948, damn. It takes decades of advancements to go from this to this. After Kirk was George Reeves, who just loved jumping off trampolines. And then, we get to the GOAT, Christopher Reeve, who made us all believe a man can fly. The team tried a couple methods, like sending off a kite version, and even shooting a doll out of an air cannon. But then they remembered they were making a movie, and not playing with toys. So they laid the actor on a molded tray with a counterweight. They put a two-way mirror angled at 45 degrees to project the background.
The light is then returned directly into the camera lens.
Thanks for that, buddy. Now go back to making nacho cheese dip. In the years that followed, a handful of other Supermen would grace the screens, but none of them really hit the mainstream, like Smallville. Cut it. In 2001, we followed a teenage Clark Kent as he goes through the trials and tribulations of high school. Yeah, I totally look like this in high school. A memorable shot in episode 2 has Clark flying through the night sky in a dream he has.
How did they do that, first of all? Is that just an aerial shot, like a helicopter shot? And then all of a sudden when they get to that, they use some kind of special effect?
Yes.
Transitionally?
Yeah.
Aside from these rare moments, Clark spends the early seasons staying mostly grounded, using powers like super strength, X-ray, and heat vision. But in season 5, episode 3, my mind was blown when he did this. Okay, he didn't fly per se, but this super jump was all younger me needed to get hype! In later seasons, he'd do a few more jumps, but when he's taken over and becomes Kal-El, it turns into full-blown flying. You really gotta give Smallville credit for showing flight on a TV budget. But back on the big screen, things were about to get a little more interesting. We see for this takeoff, Keanu's stunt double gets lifted up by wires, requiring hundreds of takes to get right. To make their jobs easier for the rest of the movie, they carefully crafted a CG version of Keanu Reeves for his infamous fight with hundreds of Agent Smiths. I say infamous because, well, I did not put in that sound effect. That's actually in the movie. Neo tries his best to fend off every Smith, but it's hopeless, and he becomes completely outnumbered. You couldn't have done that earlier? And I always love how the fight just ends after he flies away. You wanna get lunch? Yeah, I could eat. I gotta use the bathroom. Oh, the steak is so good in The Matrix. Later in the movie, as Neo flies off to rescue Morpheus and the Keymaker, we get his POV of the city beyond the freeway walls.
We started this shot January 2002, finished it almost a year later.
I don't know if you heard that right. This one shot took a whole ass year to put together. Nowadays, entire worlds can be created in a fraction of the time, which makes you appreciate everything they went through for this shot.
These trucks ripple and crash and blend with each other. The fire comes out in a way that it wouldn't normally. If we were just going for real, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting as the kinds of things we get to do in here.
Starting from storyboards drawn with a psychotic attention to detail, a scale model used for blocking, previs that worked out every millisecond, and CG trucks made to be destroyed. The actors are pulled forward on wires up until they're replaced by fully CG doubles. The final shot shows everything working together. For a sci-fi trilogy of epic proportions, that's right, trilogy, I'm not counting Resurrections, and you can't make me. The team brought the world to life bit by bit, and what better way to show it off than with Neo flying through it at breakneck speed. Back on television, the planets aligned, and a cult classic was born. Heroes introduced us to an entire world of different superpowers.
One episode, we were doing a water creature. The next episode, we're flying across Paris. Every single week is different.
Super speed, invisibility, morphing, the list goes on and on. But the power of flight was reserved for Nathan Petrelli. And after trying to escape from horn-rimmed glasses and the Haitian, can you believe that's what we call these guys? Nathan gets cornered with nowhere to go but up. Stargate Studios, the visual effects company behind most of the show, made the many memorable moments. From the technical complexity behind heroes' time stops, to creating entire cities just to blow them up. But what about flight?
We normally see our characters just, up and out of frame and boom, they're gone with a contrail left behind them.
For Nathan flying off, they filmed the actor jumping in front of a makeshift green screen on location. And after coming up with the CG double, they posed it to match the actor at the takeoff point, and just did a swap.
If you look at any of the fan sites, they always just talk about the show. The visual effects rarely ever even mention. And if we do our jobs well enough, then of course the shots play really well and they become invisible.
With the rise of Marvel, the concept of flight would be forever changed with Iron Man. After being captured by terrorists and forced to create a functioning suit of armor
with a box of scraps!
You like how I did that? Tony tests flight for the first time. The director Jon Favreau explains why he chose to shoot this sequence a bit differently.
I think people have been seeing wire work for so long that they could tell where the wires are attached, and even if you use computers to paint everything out, there's something about the physics of it that is unconvincing to me.
So for this sequence, they attached the wires to Robert Downey Jr.'s feet. Doing it this way put the center of gravity at his rocket boots, where the propulsion was actually happening.
And you could see the dynamics as he's flying through the air feels much truer to what the real physics of flying, being powered by your feet would be.
Yeah, I can fly.
Eventually, he creates the iconic red and gold Iron Man suit, a technical marvel made up of millions of different parts.
It's crazy what these guys did. It's just such a labor of love from them. They really figured this thing out.
But suit aside, the VFX team was faced with a unique challenge. Once the mask came down, you lost all of Robert Downey Jr.'s facial expressions. And what good is hiring such a charismatic actor when you can't see him reacting to flight? So they had to create an entirely new visual with the iconic HUD display.
Make something that you've never seen before, that nobody's ever seen before, but yet something that everybody thinks is really cool.
In Iron Man 3, Tony has to save every single passenger that gets sucked out of a plane. For close-up shots, the actors were filmed against green screen, but another look behind the scenes shows they shot most of it for real. 8 years later in Black Widow, they went easy on themselves and used a wind tunnel to get the same kind of shots. The director and crew could sit comfortably off to the side, and all the crazy action could be filmed in a much more controlled way. There's no doubt, Tony Stank paved the way for a new generation of flight scenes.
I have a plan. Attack. Avengers, time to work for a living.
In the same year as Iron Man, another guy with a drinking problem showed up out of nowhere, and his name was...
Get out the way!
To get this shot, Will Smith was raised up right past camera. Then some poor VFX artist had to paint out all the wires. And to get his crazy flight through downtown LA, they relied on previs. By the way, I love that they CG modeled this Jack Daniels. It's important to get the details right. The director wanted to base Hancock's costume on eagles. They spent countless hours talking about his look. And when it came time to shoot, they made sure to get every angle. Yeah, I think you got it, guys. Guys? And from one guy who threw his whole career away over a silly little joke, to another who was about to make way too many, 2001 brought us DC's Green Lantern. Ryan Reynolds plays a hotshot jet pilot that finds a dying alien and is given a magical ring that lets him create whatever he can imagine. Man, they really just greenlit anything back then.
I know, right?
And when he's not making a giant Hot Wheels track or conjuring a machine gun, he's punching people with a huge fist. Huh, so that's where it started. For his first trip into space, a late-night shoot had the actor lifted up 95 feet in the air. Normally, a stuntman would be used for something like this, but before Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds was a bit more, how can I put this nicely, expendable? And after being whisked away to the planet of Oa, he flies for the very first time. I'm just playing. A look behind the scenes shows Hal strung up by wires, and after getting a CG model just right, they would use it to take him higher than ever before. And before CG costumes and skins on mocap suits became the norm, Green Lantern helped to pioneer the technique.
You really have to put your faith in the hardworking artists behind the scenes to make this thing really pop off the screen in a unique and incredible way.
The very next year, a mysterious movie you probably haven't seen yet came out of nowhere and showed flight in a whole new way.
Oh my god, dude.
Bullshit! I'm up! Are you kidding me? Holy crap!
After three high school friends, Andrew, Matt, and Steve, stumble upon a strange glowing crystal, they wake up with the power of telekinesis. It starts off playful enough, scaring kids with a floating teddy bear, building a Lego set, and eating Pringles. Those Pringles do be hard to get out. But things start escalating when they realize that telekinesis can be used in other ways, like protecting themselves from impact, and you guessed it, flying. It takes them a few tries to get the hang of it, but pretty soon, the trio heads for the clouds. After all these superhero movies showed flight as something hard to control, it was pretty refreshing seeing the three of them just get it right away.
It was so much fun being attached to a crane by the wires, being so many stories up in the air, having such an incredible view. It was exhilarating.
One of the visual effects companies behind the movie, Rhythm and Hues, would take the footage, painstakingly remove wires and poles, and replace the background with the fields below. Tying the actors up in these gyroscopes could turn them in multiple directions, and for a movie shot on only a $15 million budget, they made flight look grounded. Did I just say they made flight grounded? It all reminds me of a Korean movie, Psychokinesis, where after drinking water affected by a strange meteor, down on his luck Seok-hyun gains telekinesis, and his power to move objects with his mind eventually turns to moving himself. With newfound control of his powers, he gets some payback on the villain. Hey, I know where that's from. In order to save his daughter, he flies off to find her in the climactic third act. But it wasn't as triumphant as it was clumsy. You should be dead right now. Starting off by collecting some drone footage, the team scanned the actor along with all his facial expressions to create the CG double. They filmed him against a massive green wall, hoisting him up with a giant rotating arm. The actor explains the rush he felt during filming.
그거를 막 뜨게 하고 뭐 이렇게 움직이고 이런 것들을 실제로 많이 했었어요.
Totally. Am I right? And to save a group of his friends, he gives them a gentle push. Relying on wire work, the extras all got pulled up from the weight of the crew yanking down on the other end. It was a pretty creative way to get a bunch of people flying at once. But elsewhere in the world, the game was about to be changed all over again. When the evil General Zod is banished to the Phantom... oh my god, this is worse than WALL-E. Now that's what I call a cockroach. The story is kicked off, and we're introduced to yet another Clark Kent, aka Kal-El, aka Superman. His first attempt at flight has its ups and downs, but eventually, he gets the hang of it. With the knowledge from decades of trial and error, the team used every method in the books, even going back to the earliest technique of using those molded body trays. And for wider angles, they created a CG double. Starting with footage of Henry Cavill, they'd switch over to digital for the flying shots, and then bring the actor back for the landings. And while CG doubles were used, the production manager explains they try to keep them to a minimum.
We want to be in there. We want to constantly push back the digital handoff. And as long as we can push that and keep that real, then visual effects is not taking over. Visual effects is assisting what we're trying to do.
For the final fight among the skyscrapers of Metropolis, Superman and Zod battle it out in a never-before-seen mid-air brawl. After tons of planning, a mix of green screen footage and CGI showed us what a fight between superpowered aliens could look like.
It's like these two gods basically fighting over the city, causing destruction, but mainly taking each other out. That's your payoff at the end as a fan.
It's been great fun working with the guys, doing the wire work for hours on end. There's a lot to be said for it because you get to fly, and that is fun.
And from an egotistical narcissist to a sorcerer of the mystic arts, Stephen Strange confronts the Ancient One and gets a rude awakening.
Open your eyes.
Using the same method as psychokinesis, they flipped Strange around like a Krabby Patty, and the result wasn't really him flying as much as being passed around like a bag of Oreos. But after some training, he shows us what flight powered by magic can look like. And now, enter Homelander. Seen in the public eye as a beacon of hope and justice, behind closed doors, he's much more nefarious than he lets on.
Alright. You fucking
Can't show that, or that, or that, or that, or that. He's definitely someone you don't want to bump into. But the show does something pretty smart. Rather than film close-ups of Homelander against green screen and having it potentially look like, well, this, he almost always is seen from the ground. By only showing Homelander this way, from the point of view of the average person, it makes him even more threatening, like he can find you at any moment. The visual effects supervisor explains how they made the superhero landings.
So when he lands, that's a typical example of how we do landings. So it's digi-double into real. Anthony's kind of got his shtick down for jumping up and down now.
That jumping part is important. Otherwise, you end up with this. Come on, Supergirl. Who's approving these shots? In 2019, we were introduced to a new kind of hero. Originally auditioning for the smaller role of Freddy, Zachary Levi won the title role and began exploring the character. Already a kid at heart, it wasn't hard for him to turn Shazam into a lovable goofball. With a range of superpowers like speed, invulnerability, and zappy zaps, his most useful one is flight. He spends the first half of the movie getting used to this ability, and to show off the learning curve, we get this shot. You might have thought he was actually wearing a cape while filming, but having one would have messed with the flying rig. So after tracking a digital double to his movements, they stuck on a CG cape afterwards. Later on, Shazam tries to escape the villain in a shopping mall. The director, David F. Sandberg, explains the main technique they used to get him to fly.
We have these rigs called tuning forks. You need some core muscles, more than I have to do it.
Using these tuning forks allowed them to get some organic and believable shots. This same tool would be used for Maleficent, Captain Marvel, and Adam Warlock, proving to be one of the best tools for actor comfort and audience believability. For the third act, what was supposed to be a small sequence grew to 1,000 VFX shots with only 12 weeks to finish. It required the VFX artist to recreate all of Philadelphia in CG and plan the routes that the hero and villain would fly through. For the sequel, Fury of the Gods, the team pushed the envelope even further. Montage is all I got, guys. I didn't actually watch it. Meanwhile, the hierarchy of power in the DC universe was about to whoops. But still, Black Adam gave us some pretty epic flying shots. While most movies use something called a parallelogram, a simple platform on a seesaw-like structure, the special effects supervisor for Black Adam used something a bit more intense, a massive robotic arm on wheels that could smoothly move and lift the actor around. It was cool and all technically, but it kinda came off a little too self-important. Come on, Rock, it's not that serious. It didn't help that the only flying shot people remember from the movie was this one. Oh no. And finally, 2021 gave us Wandavision. After enslaving the population of a small town and bringing her boyfriend back from the dead. Damn, how low can she go? Wanda ends up flying off into a fight with Agatha Harkness. A complex network of wires lifted her to the perfect angle, and when they needed to, they would seamlessly swap with a digidouble to get the same effect. But actual filming became quite the challenge. It's hard enough with one character raised up on a ton of wires. To throw another into the mix, they had to be hooked up on a rotating beam. The stunt performer for Wanda explains why they used it.
We could fly at each other and throw blasts and get those wide shots without swinging back and giving away the illusion that it was a wire.
Elsewhere, Vision has a case of stolen identity. For this shot, where the two Visions are talking about a ship or something, the VFX supervisor discusses what it took to set the sequence up.
We scouted a library that ultimately we decided we couldn't shoot there because we needed to hang them quite high.
So by building their own library, they could have much more freedom to get wide shots and close-ups. The green screen gaps would then just be filled in with CG set extension for the very first Disney Plus Marvel show before they really tested our patience. They did a pretty good job at showing flight. So at the end of this video, after seeing the many ways our favorite characters have been shown to float, tumble, or soar through the skies, I hope you've gotten a better understanding of how they filmed flying scenes in television and movies over the years. Seeing it all broken down like this might take away some of the magic, but it shows us how they made the impossible a reality. And it makes this A-tier superpower the one we all wish we had. Anyway, thank you for listening to me ramble. Hey, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.